Her name was Claire Whitmore, a woman of elegance, influence, and seemingly unshakable success. By the world's standards, she had everything: a thriving career in real estate, a beautiful home in a gated community, and a husband, Daniel, who adored her. To anyone who glanced in her direction, Claire was the very image of a life well lived. But hidden beneath the designer dresses and flawless smiles was a secret, a gnawing addiction that threatened to unravel everything. It started small, as these things often do: a prescription for painkillers after a minor surgery. At first, they were just a convenience, a way to ease the discomfort and still function at her high level. But soon, they became a necessity. The pills took the edge off more than just the pain. They softened the exhaustion, dulled the stress, and helped her escape the endless expectations placed upon her. When the prescription ran out, she found other ways to get them. And when those ways became too difficult, she turned to something cheaper, something darker. Her husband, Daniel, was a kind and patient man. He noticed the changes, the moments when Claire seemed distant, the unexplainable withdrawals from their bank account, the night she went to bed far earlier than usual. But Claire was careful. She knew how to wear the right mask, how to deflect questions, how to keep the walls between them high and sturdy, until the night they finally crumbled. It was a Wednesday evening when it happened. Claire had miscalculated her dosage, taking more than she should have in an effort to chase the numbness she so desperately craved. As she sat on their pristine white couch, her vision blurred and her body swayed. Daniel walked in just as she slumped forward, her glass of wine slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. "Claire!" His voice was a mixture of panic and heartbreak as he rushed to her side, gripping her shoulders and shaking her lightly. She tried to speak, to assure him that she was fine, but the words were thick and slurred. The look in his eyes, the betrayal, the fear, was worse than any withdrawal she had ever faced. That night, after she had come down enough to think clearly, Daniel sat across from her at the kitchen table. "How long?" His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. Claire looked away, shame pressing down on her like a physical weight. "A couple of years," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. His silence was unbearable. "I never meant for it to get this bad," she said, tears slipping down her face. "I thought I could control it." Daniel let out a heavy breath, rubbing his hands over his face. "I want to help you, Claire, but you have to want to be helped." She nodded, but deep down, she didn't know if she could ever claw her way out of the darkness she had created. The real turning point came weeks later, when Claire found herself alone in their home, curled up in the corner of their bedroom, clutching an empty bottle of pills. She had hit rock bottom, and in that moment, when she felt the most alone she had ever been, a presence filled the room. It wasn't a voice, not at first, just an overwhelming sense of peace, of something greater than herself breaking through the chaos. Then she heard him. "Claire." The voice was steady, gentle, yet full of authority. She lifted her head, tears streaking her face. Who are you?" "You know who I am." She let out a shaky breath. "Jesus." "Yes." She shook her head, shame and guilt threatening to swallow her whole. "I don't deserve you." A warmth settled over her, as if arms were wrapping around her, though no one was there. "I have never left you, Claire. Even in your darkest moments, I have been right here." She sobbed. "I can't do this. I can't fix this." "You don't have to fix it alone. Surrender it to me." She wanted to believe it was that simple, but the weight of her past mistakes was too much. What if I fail again? My grace is greater than your failures. Claire clenched her fists, hesitation battling with desperation. I've lied. I've stolen. I've hurt people who love me. How can you just forgive all of that? Because I already paid the price for your freedom. All I ask is that you trust me. Claire's breath hitched, and then, in an instant, the room around her faded away. She found herself standing in a vast open space, bathed in light. Visions flashed before her, memories she had buried, moments of her life she had long forgotten. She saw herself as a little girl, full of innocence and joy, running through a field, laughing without burden. Then she saw herself as a teenager, making choices that led her further from the path of peace. She saw the first time she took a pill to silence her pain, the first lie she told Daniel, the countless nights she cried herself to sleep, believing she was too far gone. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. "To remind you that I was there in every moment." Claire gasped as the vision shifted. She saw Jesus standing beside her in those moments, watching over her as she wept in the dark, whispering words of love when she felt unworthy, reaching for her even when she pushed him away. "I never abandoned you," he said, "and I never will." She fell to her knees, sobbing, "I don't know how to change." "You don't have to know. You only have to follow me." And with that, the vision faded, and she was back in her bedroom, the presence of Jesus still filling her with peace. For the first time in years, she let go of the tight grip she had on her own control. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just being called to stop using. She was being called to live again. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted. "Start with me." Something inside her broke. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I surrender." And in that moment, a peace washed over her, more powerful than anything she had ever experienced. It didn't erase the consequences of her actions, nor did it magically fix everything overnight. But it was the beginning, the first step toward healing. The next morning, Claire told Daniel everything, every lie, every hidden moment, every desperate attempt to keep her secret buried. She expected anger, maybe even disgust. Instead, he took her hands in his and said, "We'll fight this together." And they did. It was a long road filled with rehab, counseling, and many moments of weakness. But Claire never forgot that night in her bedroom, the voice that had called her name when she thought she was beyond saving. Years later, as she stood in front of a small group at a recovery meeting, she told her story with tears in her eyes and hope in her voice. "I had everything," she said, "and I almost lost it all. But then Jesus met me in my lowest place, and he didn't just pull me out. He walked with me every step of the way." The room was silent for a moment. Then a woman in the back, her eyes full of pain and longing, whispered, "Do you think he would do the same for me?" Claire stepped down from the podium and walked toward her, kneeling so they were at eye level. She took the woman's hands in hers and said, "He already is. He's been waiting for you, just like he waited for me." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. For the first time in a long time, Claire saw the flicker of hope in someone else, the same hope that had been ignited in her that fateful night. As the meeting ended, Claire walked outside and breathed in the crisp evening air. She wasn't just free from addiction, she was alive again. And she knew her story wasn't just hers, it was meant to be shared, to reach the broken-hearted, to remind others that redemption was possible. Because where there had once been ashes, now there was beauty. And where there had once been darkness, now there was light. It's time to surrender to Jesus. God's love and forgiveness remain constant, regardless of your mistakes or missteps. No matter how grievous your errors or how far you may have strayed, His divine presence waits with infinite patience and unconditional acceptance. God stands ready to welcome you back, arms extended in an embrace that offers not judgment, but understanding, not condemnation, but compassion. The magnitude of your mistakes does not diminish God's desire for reconciliation. Whether you bear the weight of small daily failures or life-altering poor choices, the path back to divine connection remains open. This unwavering offer of forgiveness provides comfort that you are never beyond redemption, never too broken to be made whole again, and never too lost to find your way back to the source of infinite love that awaits your return. He is waiting with open arms. No mistake is too big. Give it to Him and watch how your life transforms.